This is Real Seeds with Kate McEvoy. Kate has been doing wonderful things in West Wales for many years now, and I think all of us growers have, chosen some of those seeds at some point or other because they give so much diversity and range. The generosity of Real Seeds is exemplary, in my opinion. The ability to teach people how to save their own seed is one of the things that many seed companies don't do, although other seed companies can be wonderful, but they don't always do the unique thing that Real Seeds does. So I think we're going to get a really, really interesting talk today from Kate, and thank you, Kate.
Sorry. Good? Good. This session is entitled Growing More Seed in Your Market Garden, and hopefully I'm going to inspire all of you to go away and grow more seed in your market garden. But actually, just so I can, as a starting point, I was just going to ask who, so I can sort of judge where I'm starting from, who grows seed already? And I was going to say, who grows seed already that they use on their own farm? Quite a few of you. Who grows seed already that they share with others? Quite a few of you. And who grows seed already that they sell commercially, whether directly or through a seed company? Nobody. Oh, there we are. Those people probably don't need to come to this talk. They're like living it up on the Riviera. So I think one of the things that kind of inspired me to shape this talk, as it did, which I'm going to give a quick plug to a very nice new book called The Seed Farmer by a Canadian guy called Dan Brisebois. And his mission is to persuade every market gardener that they should grow at least some seed, and to show people how easy it is within a market garden context to grow some seed. And it is not always easy. I give a lot of seed-saving talks to home gardeners because that's what we are really. We're a home garden seed company, and we're trying to persuade home gardeners and allotment growers to grow some of their own seed. And it is a different thing. And what is easy to grow for a home gardener is not always the thing that is easy for a market gardener, and vice versa. So the plan with this talk is I'm just going to do a little bit about why you should grow your own seed. Hopefully you're a little bit interested, or you wouldn't have come here, unless you're just here after Pete's talk and you haven't quite got up yet. But then I'm just going to go through basically some easy crops for the market gardener to save seed from. And then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end if you've got any general questions. But also do feel free to stop me as I go along, and just shout out, wave your arm, whatever you like to do. But if I don't see you, just shout. But I am going to do a quick little bit on why you should grow seeds on your farm. And I think for a long time, when I used to say this, because I've been banging out on about this for like 25 years, I used to talk a lot about the practical reasons, the fact you could save money, the fact that you could get seeds you couldn't otherwise access, the fact you can get much better quality seeds with very good germination, particularly relevant now with Brexit and import problems. But actually, I think right at the moment, that to me is not the most important reason why everybody needs to save seed. And the most important reason why everybody saves seed is, I don't know, are you all aware of the new changes around gene editing that are coming in? And if you're not, you really should know about them. And if you go to the Whole Health Agriculture stall, Lawrence will tell you about them, or anyone there will tell you about them. I haven't actually got time to talk about them. But basically, gene-edited crops are being pushed through by this government very fast. It started under the Tory government. It's been pushed through under this government. People hoped it would be different. I could have told you it wouldn't. Their biggest funder is the Sainsbury family, one of the Sainsbury family. What are they? They're gene editing Sainsbury Lab. And more to the point, they have basically closed off any avenues for labelling. So what is being pushed through is gene-edited crops into the seed supply and into the food supply with no traceability and no labelling. So it will actually be very increasingly hard to actually choose to grow non-gene edited crops. You'll actually have to go to some effort to kind of find out and, put context. So to me, that is one reason. And you are probably all are aware of the increasing concentration over many years of the seed industry at the kind of macro level with your Monsantos and so on, but also even at the home garden level. So now, the Garden Organic catalogue, Dobie's, Sutton's, T&M, they're all one company owned by venture capitalists. It's something that is really increasing. And then you're probably also aware, and I'm not going to talk about this because we'll all just go into a spiral of despair and go and jump in the river, is patenting of traits, whereby companies are patenting genetic traits in plants that are just naturally occurring. So what can we do about this? The answer is actually we can do something. And yes, we should all be supporting Beyond GM's fight. They're taking the government to court to try and enforce traceability. I would urge you to support that. I would urge you to go and talk to them. I'd urge you to write to your MPs, all these different things. But what we can actually do, and I think what at this point we have to do, is we have to have a widely distributed, unsuppressible seed supply. And that can't just be the small seed companies. Obviously, there are many more of us now. There's Vital Seeds, there's the Wales Seed Hub, there's Winnow Farm Seeds, there's Seeds of Scotland, all great small seed companies that I would urge you to go and check out, especially where they're local to you. But the thing that is actually going to be really important going forwards so that we have availability of diverse open pollinated seeds that aren't controllable is for as many people as possible, both in market gardens and in home gardens and allotments, to grow some seed and to share that seed and to pass it out to people. So that's just why it's really, thank you. Hello. Oh, I'm really sorry. Oh, I'm really, really sorry. Can someone turn me down? I'm really, really sorry. I don't know.
Can you turn it down just slightly?
They can hear me too far away. Is that better? Yeah. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to shout to the whole site. Whole site knows about the importance of growing seed. Yay! Grow more seed. Anyway, now that we've told everyone the political reasons, and you can't hear now. Okay. Can you now hear me? Sorry. Right. Now I've told you about the political reasons for growing seed, and the entire site knows about my mission. I'm going to talk a bit about the practicalities of growing seed. And as I say, there are genuine practical reasons to grow seed on your market garden that I touched on earlier, getting varieties that you can't access. It's becoming increasingly difficult to import seed as a result of Brexit, particularly organic seed. Open pollinated organic seed is really hard. It's becoming almost impossible at the moment to import open pollinated varieties of tomatoes and peppers because of issues around plant health and rules around that, which means that only varieties grown in glass houses meet the criteria to be imported generally. I mean, it's getting a little bit easier, but and they tend to be F1s. So if you actually want to be sure of accessing seed, growing your own is a really good way to do that. But also, if you can't get organic seed, you can derogate once, grow your own, and then you've got organic seed going forwards. And indeed, you can share that organic seed with your friends and neighbors. Obviously, you can save money. And if you really get into growing seed, contract growing seed for seed companies, I'm not going to lie and say you're going to make a fortune, but it can be another interesting income stream for people. And if you can time it right, it can be an income stream, for example, where the money comes in, the way that the money comes in, the money tends to come in winter. Sometimes you can time the work, so that the threshing and so on is off season. So it could be a useful component within a market garden income. And I'm not really going to talk about that now. What I will do is I'll give a quick plug now for the UK Seed Sovereignty Programme, which is run by an organisation called Gaia, and they do really good training programmes if you are interested to find out more, just for your own use, but particularly for commercial growing. I would really urge people to check that out, and they have a load of really good resources online as well. So go to their website and you'll find lots of things there. So yeah, coming on to the actual practical, how do you do this? Because I thought perhaps I did want to say, like, you should do it, and here's how you should do it. Essentially, the most important thing for seed saving is growing good crops. That is actually the key skill that you need. And I'm hoping that as market gardeners, you have that skill of growing good crops already. And then to take that on from growing crops to seed saving, you do need to know some more things. It's very much like if you start growing a new crop, there's information you check out, you learn about what you need to do for that crop. And it's the same with seed saving. For each crop, you need to find out some basic things that you need to do. And the key points are basically cross-pollination. You need to make sure that your squashes don't cross, your brassicas don't cross, they don't get mixed up, you don't get sort of accidental hybrids out the other end. So crossing is one key point. Population size is another key point. You have to have a big enough population, or you end up with the horribly inbred little pug kind of affair of the seed world. But as a market gardener, that's not generally a problem. It's a problem for home gardeners, but it's rarely a problem for market gardeners because you're growing more of things, inevitably. And you need to choose which plants to save seed from, which is very much about choosing plants that are typical for your variety or that meet your needs, getting rid of any diseased plants. Again, those are things that as market gardeners, you're very used to doing. You grade vegetables all the time. You're used to thinking, actually, this is a good plant. And it's just about remembering that you have to save seed from the good plants, not the crap plants. Don't save seed from the early bolting lettuce. So those are the key three things. And as I say, there's loads of resources online. I'm not going to go into them in great detail here. But what I did then want to do was basically just talk about some starter crops and say, like, okay, what can you do that is just easy, will fit within what you're doing already, is not going to take lots of extra time because you're all short of time, and will just get you the seed-saving bug, basically. And the first one that I'm going to start with is tomatoes. Now, the joy of tomatoes is that almost all modern tomatoes are basically self-pollinating. You can see in the picture. So they have this cone of petals which surrounds the anthers, so the insects can't get in to pollinate them. Now, you'll hear a lot, you'll read online about, them crossing and so on. I think that's in the States, things tend to chew through the petals, but it's not essentially a problem in the UK. So tomatoes are a really, really great starter crop. I'm just going to say, I'm actually broadly assuming here, do people know the difference between an open pollinated seed and an F1 hybrid seed? Or I'm assuming I don't need to do that bit here. Stick your hand up if you don't be shy. No, we're all good. Okay, so obviously you can only save seed if you want it to come true, from open pollinated seed. You can't save from a hybrid. There are whole projects around dehybridizing hybrids and doing things with that, but I'm not going to touch on that here. So open pollinated seed. But yeah, the thing with tomatoes is tomato seed is ripe when your fruits are ripe. So essentially, and tomatoes make on the whole a lot of seeds per fruit. Even the not seedy ones make quite a lot of seed per fruit. So if you want to have 200 tomato seed for next year, that is not a big deal to get that. It's a small pick. And if you want to do them commercially, there's more complicated things that you need to do. But if you just want to keep tomato seeds for using in your market garden, you pick your tomatoes, you scoop the seeds out into a jar with the gel, you leave them to ferment for 3 days, which gets rid of, they have the gel coating on them, which is a germination inhibitor. And then at the end of the 3 days, you pour plenty of water in to dilute them. There'll be some mold and stuff. Give them a stir every so often during those 3 days. The seeds will sink to the bottom, and you just rinse them off in changes of water. And you have seed, which you can then lay out on a plate to dry. Like one of those plastic chopping boards is a really good place to lay them out to dry. Put them in somewhere with good airflow. Let them dry, so that they're ambient, dry, not soggy. Put them in a paper envelope. I'll talk more about drying so you can store in a different way. Put them somewhere safe, well labeled, always well labeled. That's really, really important at all stages. You can see that says Abikini on the side of it. And there you are. You've got tomatoes for next year. And that's it. It is genuinely that simple. Why would you buy tomato seed? Because, why not? Why not do this? How are we doing on time? Sorry, I'm just looking at my timings. We're right. So that's tomatoes, and that's a lot of people's starter way into seed saving is tomatoes. If you don't want to do that, if you can't be bothered to do that, you can take a tomato and literally dot the seeds out onto a piece of kitchen paper, write the name on it, keep it, and tear it up and paint the plant little bits of kitchen paper next year. If you just want to try it with a few, if you've got some heirloom variety and you only want a few, like a dozen plants, just do that. It is genuinely no work. So yeah, everyone should do that. Moving on from that, peppers. So I never recommend peppers to home gardeners because actually they're not very good at getting them ripe and they cross. So the thing is, peppers do cross. They cross at quite a low level, about 5%. And sweet peppers cross with hot peppers. I'm sure, again, you all know that your sweet peppers and your hot peppers are pretty certain, on the whole, will all be capsicum annum, although some hot peppers are a different species. If you know your hot peppers are a different species, if you're growing a picartum pepper, naki type pepper, for example, they won't cross. But generally, sweet peppers, hot peppers will all cross with one another at about a 5% level if you were growing them mixed up together. But fortunately, because that's quite low level, if you grow them in separate tunnels, so if you have your pepper that you want to keep for seed in one tunnel and all your other peppers in another tunnel, you won't see crossing at any meaningful level that is relevant to you as someone keeping seed for on-farm use or for sharing, to be honest, unless they're literally end-to-end and open. You won't see a meaningful amount of crossing. So yeah, again, joy of peppers, when your pepper is ripe, essentially your seeds are ripe. It's slightly more complicated than that in that they do need to be actually a bit more ripe than when you would pick them for sale. And if anyone is actually interested in this, I brought an example. Here's one I prepared earlier. And you can get a feel for that by looking at what the seeds look like. And again, I'm sure you're all aware of what a good pepper seed looks like. It's creamy and it's got a bit of depth to it. It's not white, it's not pale. So that's a ripe pepper seed. And that's another ripe pepper seed in a different variety. It's got quite a nice creamy look to it. And those you perhaps can't see because it's not a great picture, are whiter and paler and thinner. But if anyone is interested, I brought a ripe one. And what was not a ripe one, but then sat in my van for 3 days and might be a bit more ripe now, just to show you, come up afterwards and we'll have a look. Yeah. You can ripen them off the plant and the seed will ripen a bit. Someone was asking me that, and I think it probably is, but don't worry, it's all right, don't worry. So yeah, again, peppers, really easy. Something people do ask me about is aubergines, and I would tell you that growing aubergines is actually much harder. You'd think it would also be relatively easy, but no, that's easy actually. So what I would say is you can get aubergines that are full of seed, you can get that seed out, which I'll tell you how to do in a second, never bloody germinates. But the point I would say is actually I can grow any quantity of aubergine seed that germinates at about 60%, and the legal minimum is 65%. But actually, if you know that and you plant double, actually that's probably okay. I'll tell you how to do a little germ test at the end. So how you get them out is you leave your aubergines on the plant until they're way overripe, until they've gone. If they're a purple variety, they'll go quite yellowy purple. If they're a white variety, they'll go really yellow, and they start to feel a bit soft. You take your aubergine off and you leave it for a few days more, and then we actually put through ours through like an apple scratter is what works quite well. But you can also just chop them up roughly with a knife and then put them in a pan and like squash them, or you can whack them with a rolling pin, anything like that loosens them. Then you just wash the seed out. So that works really well. But yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say is we find it really hard to grow good aubergine seed. So then we buy aubergine seed from France where it's warmer, and that doesn't germinate either. I think they're just awkward so-and-sos, basically. But there we are. Yes, aubergines will cross. Again, one variety in a tunnel. Yeah, and I think it's about the same percentage. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, sorry. They will not as well, because the thing with peppers is you can actually, if you're all in, I mean, and I wouldn't recommend this at market garden levels, you don't want to be pissing about with it, but you can just bag a flour on a pepper with a little bit of, a little bit of mesh, anything to keep the insects out. But aubergines, if you then flick them, they will then self-pollinate, but like, who has the time, basically? I think that's a ripe pepper. That's a ripe pepper. It's got a bit of a softness to it and a bit of wrinkling to it. That's definitely, the seed will be good in that. But yeah, examples here. So that's peppers. Brassicas. So brassicas as a seed producer in the UK, brassicas are great. I mean, honestly, brassicas pay their way so well because they make loads of seed. They ripen seed brilliantly in the UK. We have a great climate for it. It's really good. We make wonderful seed, but they cross. Absolutely. They're what you call obligate outbreeders. They have to cross, and they will cross. And as I'm sure you're all well aware, there are many times, because they're such fabulous and amazing and wonderful plants that are so useful and so incredible for us as humans to eat. We've done so many different things with each species. So, for example, again, you probably know it's like your cabbage and your cauliflower and your kohlrabi and your Brussels sprout, and more to the point, your purple sprouting broccoli and your kales that are like the cavallonera, those sorts of kales, and most of your curly kales are all Brassica oleracea. They're all the same species. And then your Swedes are the same species as your Napas kales, which are the Red Russians, Hungry Gap, those sorts of things. If you ever wonder what species, if you're ever in the position, this is actually a very quick tip for more advanced seed growing, if you can't figure out what species your kale is for seed saving, which can be tricky, and this guy who's an amazing kale grower in Lancashire told me this. I rang him up and said, how do you actually figure it out? Because I've got these instructions for like looking at the seeds under a microscope and trying to look at the shape of the, if it gets mildew really badly in the summer, it's a Napas kale. It's Brassica napus. If it doesn't get mildew really badly in the summer, it's an Oleracea kale. It's the cabbage type kale. And it's absolutely true. Like, really, I mean, that certainly works in West Wales and it works in Lancashire. Do you get mildew on your Hungry Gap type kales if you're in the southeast? Yeah. Yep, there we are. Oh, interesting. Got mildew. Interesting. I never grow mustards in the summer, so there we are. Sounds like a nasty disease. Sorry, Jon. So let me remember. Not that I have, fortunately, but I think oilseed rape is a tricky one. If you're in a rape, it's not, but you get weedy oilseed rape, don't you? And is that Napas or is that Rapa? Napas, yeah, so oilseed rape, and that's a really good point because obviously I'm in West Wales where we don't have that. No, charlock and things like that don't. It's the oilseed rape or any field crops, and they will cross within about kilometre radius because it's the sort of insect flight. But all of this is basically, I'm coming back to say that actually, in a market garden context, growing brassicas is tricky. But the exception that I would say is the salad brassicas, which are Brassica rapa, so your Mitsuna, well, the salad brassica, and so your Mitsuna, your Mibuna, Komatsuna, all the ones that are Brassica rapa, so long as you only grow one of them or only let one flower, they are actually fine to grow. They make a lot of seed. They make their seed fast. You actually don't want to be growing an Oleracea cabbagey type thing because they take a long time to ripen their seed. They're sat around for a long, long while. Whereas something like a bed of Mitsuna, once it starts to flower, especially in a tunnel, it will make and ripen its seed very quickly. They'll be out end of June, beginning of July, if it's an overwintering crop, maybe even earlier, depending on the weather. And you'll get absolutely stacks of seed off them. And obviously, there's something where you tend to use quite a lot of seed. So they're much more viable. And mustards, the same. So mustards, Brassica juncea. And so long as you are only growing one mustard, again, exactly the same thing. An overwintered crop will go up and make its seed very fast. And they'll grow perfectly good seed outdoors as well. So they are the one that I would say is really worth considering. Rocket, again. So Danbury's White in his Seed Farmer book, he suggests rocket as the perfect first seed crop for market gardeners outside. You let part of a bed bolt. It won't cross unless you're growing multiple varieties of rocket. I don't know how many of you grow, maybe you do after listening to Pete's talk, grow multiple varieties of rocket, but probably not at the same time. As long as you only let one flower, it's very, very, very easy. The seed is really easy to clean. It comes out as long as you pick it at the right moment, and I'm hoping I've got a picture. yes for that. You pick it slightly before it shatters, you dry it on a tarp in the tunnel, you put it in a tub truck or something and stomp on it, and then you just sieve it out. Or you can even just shake it and lift off the pods. It's really easy. And the other point as well, as I'm sure, again, all of you know, and I'm preaching to the choir here, having flowering brassicas in your market garden is really, really important for your parasitic wasps, which we probably all know this year, as everybody else had biblical plagues of caterpillars. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Even I have so many flowering brassicas. Normally, I don't worry about caterpillars because the parasitic wasps mop them up. But yeah, we did have a bit of a biblical plague this year. So you want those flowering brassicas in your market garden anyway. So why not get a benefit off of it and leave it 3 or 4 months extra and get the seed as well? So that would be that one. Yeah, don't try and do radishes. They're a pain to process unless you are very patient. I didn't grow radishes until I got a plot thresher, basically. So the only thing with brassicas is basically spotting when they're ripe and to take them before the pods shatter. That's the critical thing. And as soon as basically you'll start to see the pods will start to change color a bit and they'll just look a bit different. It's one of those things, if you get your eye, as soon as you start to open it up, you'll see that many of the seeds are still green, but some are starting to turn brown. And once they're at that point, you can just cut them and lay them out on a tarp, and they'll be completely fine. And to be honest, every bird in Pembrokeshire knows that we are the source of delightful brassica seed to eat. It's, they just descend upon us. They've learned 100%. And I take my brassicas really quite early now, like they're only just beginning to colour, and the germination is fine and the vigour is fine. You just lay them out on a tarp and they ripen off the thing. We're doing fine on time, that's good. Umbellifers, like carrots. So carrots are a bit of a pain, and I wouldn't suggest them as a first crop because they don't ripen outside. You have to dig them, select them, replant them. They need to be in a tunnel. Certainly in West Wales, might be different in Sussex or Kent, actually, for those of you for whom I'm very jealous. But things like dill and coriander, obviously they're great again to have in some of them flowering. I don't know, do people leave a bit of dill, a bit of coriander flowering in the tunnel just to bring in all those beneficials? And you can leave 2 or 3 plants. They do cross, but they don't particularly suffer from inbreeding depression, which is where if you don't have a big enough population, that's what happens. Again, just leave them a bit longer and you'll get all the seed that you need to use on farm. I mean, you're not going to have seed to sell, but you can very easily have plenty of seed for your own use just by leaving them a bit longer. On the whole, certainly where we are, you don't get good seed outdoors, so I wouldn't particularly bother with that. They just do so much better in a tunnel, and they're probably in there doing their thing anyway. Again, if you're in a dry part of the world, that might be different. Okay, beans and peas. I'm guessing, do lots of people save their own beans and peas already? I'm imagining people probably do. Peas don't cross effectively. If you want to make crosses of peas, you literally have to cut the flowers open before they're actually mature, because by the time they've opened, they have pollinated themselves. French beans will cross, but at a relatively low level. So if you separate them by actually, put your peas in between your beans in your block, they'll be okay. It is very, very trivial level. Runner beans do cross a quite high level, but I imagine you're only growing one variety of runner bean. Does anyone grow like multiple varieties of runner bean? If you do, why? Do you grow runner beans at all? Maybe you don't grow runner beans at all. I don't like runner beans. Sorry? That's fair enough. Perfectly reasonable. But you can't save seed at that point, not and get a true crop. We'll talk a little bit more about populations and so on at the end. But the main thing that people often say to me, and I sort of assumed that this was obvious, so forgive me if it is, but I had a conversation with a market gardener the other day who had been sitting around podding out their French beans and was complaining about the fact it was a bit slow. But does everyone actually put their beans and peas that they're keeping for seed in a dumpy bag and jump on them? Because if you don't, that's a very easy way to process them. And you don't need to sit around and pod your French beans out hand by hand. You really don't. dry them on a tarp in the tunnel, stick them in a dumpy bag, and stomp, and that's quick and easy. They're actually not a great one. So people often ask me about growing beans or peas as a commercial seed crop within their market garden. And I mean, obviously, great if you want to, but they're quite hard to make pay commercially because you need quite a lot of them, if that makes sense. You don't. So you probably will get maybe even on a climbing French bean, you'll get like 70 times yield to the plant or 100 times. So for each plant, you'll get maybe 70 or 100 good saleable beans out of it, and it can be as low as 50. And on a dwarf, bush bean, you are talking more like probably 50 beans per plant. And obviously each packet of seed, even if you're selling to a home gardener has like 100 beans in it, and so you need one plant for each packet of seed. As opposed to a tomato plant, where you can imagine you get many, many, many packets of seed from one plant, or a brassica plant. So the scale just means that economically it is quite hard to make it pay unless you have, unless you're doing it at field scale with machinery, basically. If you're doing it at hand scale, yeah. There we are, just worth bearing in mind. So, I mean, those are some starter crops. And the other thing that I would say is that some of the unusual crops, the less common crops, if you do grow them, super easy to save seed from. You're very unlikely to be growing two varieties, so crossing it becomes less of an issue. That's a picture of tomatillos. If anyone grows tomatillos, just take the ones that have fallen off the plant. I put them through my scratter. I've got a little hand scratter, but again, you can just crush them with your hand in a bucket, wash them through a sieve, tomatillo seed. There you go, easy as. Again, dry it on one of those like plastic chopping boardy things. Give some good airflow. That isn't the picture. Things like amaranths. Again, they make that if anyone grows amaranths, if you let sunflower, again they will cross. Don't do multiple, but there probably aren't lots of amaranths. And just keep an eye on the flowers and rub, and the seed will come out. Salad Burnett, if you grow that, all these things that you're quite likely letting flower at a certain point to attract all the pollinators. Leave them a bit longer, and you'll get the seed. So yeah, that's broadly some kind of starter crops. I did think I'd talk briefly, having had this conversation about someone, picking out their things, about some different ways of processing if you're at a slightly bigger scale to home garden. We used to process our seed like this. I have now got a plot thresher, but I was running a seed company for years, probably about 15 years before we had it. So I used to do all my processing like this. So if you're at a scale where you're a bit bigger than, this is brassicas, small scale, stick them in a tub truck or in a dumpy bag, stomp on them, there you go. This is a bit of a bigger scale, so you just lay them out on a tarp, get them nice and dry, or whack them with a stick. Very old school. I mean, obviously, if you were being traditional, you'd have a 2-part flail, and I suspect you'd probably injure yourself if you didn't know what you were doing. So just a bit of stick, and just kind of fluff it up, hit it some more, and then you can just kind of pick all the trash off the top, and you'll find your seed is just on the tarp at the bottom. People often ask about sieves, just like the sort of soil sieve you can get anywhere, buy them off eBay with different size inserts. They're sometimes sold as bonsai sieves. They work great. I mean, the sieve that we use probably the most is one that my dad happened to pick up in the Isle of Doom in the centre of Liddell. He just thought it looked useful, brought it home, and it's great. You don't need to buy expensive specialist seed sieves. Just anything that is different sizes of mesh. Again, this is sculpit. This probably isn't this helpful because probably no one grows it at all. It's a cultivated bladder campion. It's a great salad plant. You should all grow sculpit. It's very interesting. It's perennial. Great for the hungry gap. Did you grow sculpit, Pete? Clearly you should. It's very nice. It's very tasty. It's a cultivated bladder campion. Yeah, it's a perennial, so it's probably a bit annoying from that point of view. But anyway, it's a good crop. Again, I've just got it on top. I'm stamping on it, and you can see the sieve next to it is just a soil sieve. So, do you not like it? Chef didn't like it. Were you picking it? Did you keep mowing it off and picking it super small? No. Yeah, because it's got that kind of herbally. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's funny. I really like it. It's much less bitter than chicory. I bet they buy chicory. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and then again, just rubbing through a sieve. I'm going to try and get through so we've got some time for questions. So yeah, that's sort of processing. Drying is another one. Obviously, dry your seed well. Cool, dry, good airflow is what you want to get good dry seed. If you want to grow seed that will keep from long, so dry it to ambient and then just store it in paper so it can breathe. Obviously, your seeds are living things. If you do want to save your seed for multiple seasons, if you get into it and you're like actually growing more, dry it down in a sealed tub with an equal weight of silica gel for a week. And that is you can just buy silica gel on eBay. It's not expensive. And that will get it properly dry. Yeah, cool and dark storage, basically how you would normally save your seed. So yeah, and then a few resources, and then we'll have some time for questions. I say I plug this book, which is Seed Farmer by Dan Brisebois. If you are totally new to seed saving and you're a market gardener, it's well worth a read. Feel free to come and have a look later. Technical knowledge, although this is called Back Garden Seed Saving, and it's written for home gardeners, but it's actually probably the best technical book that I know if you are new to seed saving and you want a crop by crop guide to how to do it. So Sue and I are actually thinking, this is 20 years old now, it's a Garden Organic publication. We were thinking that we should try and update it a bit and put in a bit more small commercial stuff. So we went through and looked at all the other books in the hope that we didn't need to, and decided that actually this is still the best. So at some point there might be an update if we actually get around to it. But it's great. You probably don't need an update really. Back garden seed saving. Yeah, I'll just put it there for later. And then if you get more into seed saving, the organic seed grower, if you start getting interested in commercial seed growing, this is a great resource. I actually tend to rave about it to everyone, and then someone pointed out that if you haven't done any seed saving and you haven't kind of got a certain amount of technical knowledge, it's not terrifically accessible. But if you are into seed saving, you get into seed saving, this is kind of the Bible for what to do. This and the seed, so this is American and the seed farmer is Canadian. So that is the only problem, is that some of the climatic advice is a bit different. But back garden seed saving is British, is great. Another quick, I plugged the Seed Sovereignty website and their training. Again, another quick plug for all the amazing small seed companies that are out there now. If you're looking for sources of good open pollinated seed to start with, they are places to go to. As I say, there's a lot more like regionally diverse ones now. Seeds of Scotland, Wales Seed Hub, Vital Seeds, of course, in Devon, they're not new anymore, and Widow Farm Seeds, who are doing a lot of organic flower seed as well as vegetables. Are there any others that I've missed? I haven't thought of. Anyway, probably not. Yeah, so we've got plenty of time, hopefully, for all your seed-saving questions, unless you're all like, oh, it's Sunday morning. Hey. Okay, do you need a thingy? I think... That is a really interesting question that I don't know the answer to, because we only sell open pollinated seeds. They always do, as far as I'm aware, and it's usually seen as a selling point. So, but I don't think that they're legally obliged to. Do you know that, John? Yeah, okay. 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 That's interesting. K-lets are definitely an F1. There's no OP K-let, sadly. Mission for someone. That is a mission for someone. There'll be three different F1 varieties. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, so selection is an interesting question. Do you select the best? Do you select the one which fits your needs, which I suppose in some sense is the best? Or do you select the one that is typical for the variety? And it depends what you are trying to do. That is the critical. Well, so, or do you want a population? Do you want diversity? And that is a question to which there isn't a right answer, but there's an answer that you need to be aware of what you're doing. So it may be that you're growing seed of whatever you might be growing seed of, and you want there's something about that variety that you want to lead it in a certain direction. So, for example, I think a good example is Gardener's Delight tomato, which has become smaller and sweeter over the years because companies have actually gone down that route, because that's what people want now, is they want, on the whole, a smaller, sweeter cherry tomato. And so you might want to take plants, you might want to select quite heavily for plants that meet that slightly different thing that you're looking for. You might want, so at the minimum, you absolutely want to select out any diseased plants and any like less vigorous plants. You know, you want to get your roguing. So roguing is taking out the bad plants. You might be particularly concerned with maintaining a variety. As a seed company, we're maintaining a variety. And so we need to make sure that we have typical plants and capture the appropriate level of diversity within that variety. So we are trying to maintain a variety as it has been. Or you might be looking towards developing a more diverse population. And I haven't spoken at all about land races, constructed land races. In America, they're often called grexes, which I think is a very good word, because it's kind of a land race is slightly more complicated by having, you know, they are more traditional, whereas, so you get like a traditional land race, which is, so these things, in the legislation, they're called organic, if they're organic heterogeneous material is what we'll talk about, OHM. And the legislation talks about that. But what that is essentially, you have a population, not a variety where they are all the same. And there's actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to go on. Yeah, there's a long answer to this question, but it's really worth knowing. There's something I didn't talk about. But diversity, as we are seeing the effects of climate change more and more, and I didn't go on. I could have talked for ages about why we all need to grow seed and why gene editing is not in any way the answer. But as climate change is kicking in, we're all well aware that we are seeing increasing extremes in our weather, and that's really hard to deal with within our growing situations. And diversity is one way that you approach that. So the gene editing people say, right, we're having this problem. We're going to gene edit our crop to deal with this problem. We're going to make it more drought tolerant, or we're going to make it more flood tolerant, or we're going to make it resistant to this disease in a very narrow way. The problem is next year, it won't need to be drought tolerant. It'll need to be hurricane tolerant, or it'll need to be like, yeah, who knows? And that's why diversity is very important, and why diversity is, I think, the way that we all need to be going. Diversity of crops, but also diversity within crops. And so you might be selecting for diversity. Sorry, that was a very diverse answer to your somewhat short question. So a land race is a traditional, it's population genetics. So you have a population, not a narrow variety. It's almost easier to describe it by what it isn't. And it's different from something like YQ, the Wakeling's wheat. Do you all know YQ, the Wakeling's wheat population, which is a constructed population where they took many different strains and put them together. And now it's developing into a land race over the years. But it started with someone making that. And then you get, as I say, in the States, grexes are a big thing. So as I say, population genetics and population varieties have become very much a thing in the grain world. They need to become a thing in the vegetable world. They are beginning to become more of a thing in the States. We haven't got there yet here. It's starting. There's a fantastic book that, stupidly, I didn't bring with me called Landrace Gardening by a very eccentric guy whose name I've gone a blank on. Who wrote Landrace Gardening? Does anyone know who wrote Landrace Gardening? Yes, Joe Lofthouse. Thank you. I knew someone would know.
Well done.
Well worth reading. It's short, it's very accessible, it's very easy to read. It will just make you think in a different way about your growing. So he calls them land races, but they're not. I would think so. Grexes is the term that I like. In the seed sovereignty program, they call them flocks, and where you are purposefully crossing many varieties and then working with that material and selecting from it. And there's a lot of work on that going on within the seed sovereignty program. Sorry, I'll stop there. Someone's asking a question. What? I think because they're recording it, maybe in.
Oh, okay. The Gaia Foundation have a crowd breeding project that will hopefully expand. So it's also worth looking at that in terms of populations and flocks. The question I've got for you was about the drying, ambient drying, and then the sort of forced further drying.
Yeah.
Is it okay to freeze seeds from just being ambient dried?
No, you need, so if you're going to so freezing seed is what you'll do if you're concerned about, are you wanting to freeze them for long storage or because of insect eggs and so on?
Essentially pest, bean pest.
Yeah, so if you have a problem with bean seed weevil or with insects in sweet corn or something, freezing the seed but your seed has to be properly dry. So if your seed is only ambient dry, the cells will still contain water and they will freeze, expand, and burst. Whereas if your seed is dried right down so that it is, properly dry, like a bean. So the classic thing with a bean, if you bite on it, your tooth will break or the bean will break. It won't dent. Do it with caution. Don't blame me for your dentist bills. Or it will, some seeds will snap, like a longer seed will snap. And at that stage, you're good to freeze it, but not ambient dry, not ambient humidity. And freeze them for a good week to 10 days. And so get them properly dry, seal them, really well sealed glass jar or plastic, in the freezer for about, I'd say 10 days, and bring them out and don't unseal them until they're completely defrosted, otherwise they soak up more water.
On drying, can you use rice or salt instead of silicone?
Yeah, so rice is a good one. I have never tried salt. So rice, you need considerably more rice. So basically quite a large quantity of rice, dry it in the oven, after you've been baking until it's really dry, then put it in a sealed container, let it cool down, obviously, and then you can put your seed. I would probably go for like 10 times the volume of rice to seed. And I would probably then just leave my seed in there with the rice, or certainly leave it in there for, quite a long time, because silica gel obviously soaks up water quickly, but with rice, probably more like a month or something, or just leave it stored like that, all together. And you can eat the rice afterwards, obviously. It doesn't hurt. No harm is done to the rice.
What do you think of the argument that open-pollinated seeds haven't been maintained very well by a lot of the seed companies, which is why people have turned to F1s?
I mean, it's really true.
Boltardy, for example, what's happened to Boltardy?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree. It's really true. Open-pollinated seeds have certainly been neglected, and many varieties are not well maintained. And that is exactly why people see them as, or certainly in the past have seen them as second class. I think Charles might have a view on that. But are you trying to answer that as well? Oh, all right. Sorry, I thought you wanted to chip in. That's okay. But no, Yeah, I think it's really, really true that they have. And I mean, so for example, we've got a variety of Brussels sprouts called Seven Hills, which has actually now been abandoned by Kings. And I'm trying to kind of slowly regenerate. I loved that variety, and we used to buy it. We didn't used to grow it, because we do buy it. I should say at Real Seeds, we buy in as well as, so we grow. I think last year, between us and our growers, we managed 47% of what we sell. I've been aiming for 50% for years, and every time I grow more seed, they sell more seed. It's very annoying. But yeah, so really good. Brussels sprouts are a really good example. And yeah, absolutely. And again, so that's something, if you have a variety you love, you can lead it back. But it is a bit of a project, I have to say.
Over how many years might that take?
Yeah, well, quite a while. I would say, so I've got badly maintained varieties of beetroot, and but the thing is, so beetroot is a good example. I mean, to be honest, you can still sell the off types. So I would grow, 50-meter bed of beetroot, and I'd get rid of half of them and plant that. And if you do that 3 or 4 times, you will be back to where you want to be. And you can sell the off-type beetroot, or eat them. It's not, depending on what you're marketing on a farm. That is the thing, is that, obviously farms to our markets, they like diversity. It's not like the supermarkets. The degree of diversity is great, isn't it? So,
actually, leads to my next question, because I'm saving onion seed, and no one seems to agree how many onions you actually need. to get a big
Ah.
population? Do you have a view?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, people give a minimum, which is like 20 or something. I would probably go for 40 or 50 myself. So they're not as bad as leeks. Leeks are really, really plastic. I don't know if people know that. You know, when you grow your leek seedlings, you always get little crap ones in it, and that is just, they always do that. And you have to get rid of those. But they also move very fast. They're extremely genetically mobile, as it were. I'm sure there's a better way to put this. So you have to grow a lot of leeks and select really hard. But onions, I would probably ideally go for 40 or 50 at a market garden or a sharing level. If you're just doing it at a home garden level, then 15 or 20 is fine. And they don't make loads of seed, to be honest, and you want quite a lot of seed. So you probably want 50 onions for seed. And the insects love them. So, yeah.
Can you explain what you were saying about leeks a bit more?
Yes, I'm going to try to explain this. You really want my colleague, who is a botanist. So I'm going to apologize for this. I should say I'm a seed grower. I'm not a botanist or a plant scientist. My colleague Ben, we started Real Seeds together. He is a plant scientist, and he would explain it really well. But I can tell you the practical consequences of it is that you have to pay really strict attention when you're growing leeks to making sure that you take leeks that are typical of the variety and vigorous and good quality. Because if you let your attention wander when you're selecting them, your variety will change very fast. Whereas a lot of things, there's a bit more skill. And I don't know genetically why, but Ben would be able to tell you. Sorry.
Anybody else?
Is there anything that's particularly dodgy to look out for? Dodgy/dangerous, like cucurbits?
Oh,
maybe?
the famous poisonous courgettes.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you the story. Oh, God, it's such a thing now. It's like a classic Daily Mail shocker, isn't it? The poisonous courgettes. So basically, if you go a few years back, one of the big seed companies, I can't remember who, imported a batch of courgette seed that had been grown too close to an ornamental gourd. And they are both cucurbita pepo, and they will cross. You notice I didn't mention cucurbits at all, actually, and I might segue back to that a little bit, because they're not an easy one in the market garden. And if your courgettes cross with an edible gourd, they will be horribly, horribly, inedibly bitter. And if you force yourself to eat much of one of them, you will be quite sick. I don't understand how people managed to eat them, but they did. So long as you don't grow ornamental gourds in your market garden that are cucurbita pepo that will cross with your courgettes, you are not at risk, basically. And also, so long as you, I believe very occasionally, very, very, very occasionally, and I have not had this experience, cucurbita pepo can do a throwback like a bitter. The bitter gene will express itself. The original wild types were bitter, and it's been bred out of them. Like, it would be horribly bitter. Don't eat revoltingly bitter courgettes, I think is the mission, is the message that I can give. But I can see there's another question. I'm just going to say, there's a reason I didn't mention the cucurbits in a market garden, and that's because you're going to be growing multiple varieties. So obviously courgettes courgettes are cucurbita pepo, but so are most of the summer squashes, like acorn squashes, pumpkins, they're cucurbita pepo. And then the winter squashes are mainly cucurbita maxima. And it's very unlikely that you're only going to be growing one variety. They do cross. You can hand pollinate, which is what we advise home gardeners to do, but it is time consuming and fiddly, and it's a lovely thing to do at a home garden level. And it's a great thing to do with children, and it really engages people with seed saving. But I just don't think it's in any way sensibly viable at your level. And if you don't isolate them, they will cross, and the mixtures, it's not that they'll be poisonous, but like pepo mixes, you don't get a delightfully exciting mix of different courgettes. You get they seem to just come out with the worst of everything, in my experience. People do landrace winter squash, maxima squash varieties. There's one called Desert Spirit landrace, which is quite popular. And sorry? Yeah. And then I think there's some of the crowd breeding projects of squash landraces. Jane at Oxton Organics, if any of you know about her, she is doing a lot of work with these sort of populations. And Holly Sylvester, who is now up in East, how do you say it? East Nook Market Garden. She does a lot of work on these. And they are working on winter squash varieties. I'm not convinced that Jane's having amazing results as yet with her winter squash, but I think it takes time. I'm not wholly convinced that that diverse populations are the way to go with winter squashes myself. So yeah, that's why I didn't really. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Chaz again. I just on that same point that you sell the dieta lupin.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do we know whether or not, if we're saving that seed, some naughty lupin DNA is getting in there?
You have to have it
slowly poisoning.
You have to have it isolated. Basically, you need, if you're going to grow a safe seed of the dieta lupin, you have to have it not near any other annual lupins that it will cross with.
So there's nothing in the flavour when you're eating?
Well, it'll be bitter. Yeah, if it's bitter, then it's not good to eat.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, basically bitterness is a warning to us that we shouldn't be eating this, essentially. I mean, with the exception of chicories and so on. But that's why the reason that people have a negative reaction to bitter is that generally it's toxic compounds that make them bitter. So, follow what your brain is telling you, to a certain extent. Apart from with chicory. Don't follow what your brain is telling you there. Buy chicory and put nice dressing on it.
Wow. I just want to give a shout out to the organisers of this event. The quality of speakers today and throughout the whole 3 days has been exceptional. And that was amazing. The knowledge that we have within this movement is extraordinary. And so thank you, Kate. And it's going to continue because we have various other speakers today who are also going to speak on many subjects. And yeah, I just really am humbled by how much effort has gone into producing a quality of speakers of this quality. So thank you, Kate, for a wonderful, wonderful talk.